Good morning, Katie. This is my first time ever doing a video, so hopefully I do a good job. So, in making your sourdough bread, there is a rule that you use that is called the 20-70-2 rule. And what that means is that 20% of what you're going to use will be starter, 70% will be water, or that's also called hydration, and 2% will be salt. So the loaf that I make, and it turns out to be a nice size, what we like, is we start off with 500 grams of flour. And I just use regular all-purpose flour, nothing special. I've been told you can use combination of flours like wheat flour, whole wheat, white flour, and so on and so forth. But I just use regular, ordinary, my case, it's Robin Hood flour. So if you're using 500 grams of flour, your starter will be 20% of that. So that will be 500 grams times 20%, which equals 100 grams. So we use 100 grams of our starter. The water, which will be 70%, will be 500 grams times 70%, which equals 350 grams of water. And then your salt is 2%, which equals 100 grams times 2% equals 10 grams. This is the end of video 1. Okay, let's start making our dough. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to gather all our ingredients. Flour, salt, water. I like using kind of room temperature water. I have heard people say you got to use warm water, like 120 degrees. Some people say just use tap water, whatever comes out of your tap. So exactly what to use, I don't know. And then starter. And of course, we're going to follow this recipe that we talked about in our first video. And you need a weigh scale. So first thing to do, I'm going to turn the weigh scale on. I have it set to grams. Because I have this bowl on there, it's going to set it at 0. So the weight right now is 0. And the first thing to do is I'm going to put in 100 grams of starter into this bowl. Let me do that and come right back. Okay, as you can see, I actually got 101 grams. That's close enough. Now I'm going to add in 500 grams of flour. So to do that, you're going to press a button on your scale called TAR, T-A-R. And what that does is set your scale back to 0, even though there's stuff in your bowl. So TAR, back to 0. Now I'm going to scoop in 500 grams of this flour. Be right back. Okay, I got my 500 grams of flour. Now I'm going to hit the TAR button again to reset it to 0. And now I'm going to add in 350 grams of my water. Okay, 350, close enough. And now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to stir this with our fork to get a really shaggy dough. I'll be right back. Stir, stir. Oh, by the way, use a fork to stir to make the shaggy dough. So we're going to stir it up. And I just realized how hard it is to hold a camera and stir it up. So I'm going to turn this off. Back in a minute. So I have it stirred with the fork. So I get it about here. Now I'm going to use my hands to finish stirring it, and it's best to use, not stirring it, sorry, to incorporate it. So let me get my hands wet so the dough doesn't stick, and I'll come right back. So I'm just use my hands to try to get as much of this dough into here as I possibly can. So this is good enough. What you're left with is very shaggy dough. and you will get dough on your fingers, so don't worry about that. I'm now going to either place a towel, or I like using plastic wrap, set it aside for 30 minutes, and then we'll be back. Did you catch the mistake I made? I forgot to add the salt. So I'm going to add the salt now, and then I'm going to incorporate it in by just kneading it with my fingers and hands. And then we wrap it, and we put it on a shelf somewhere on a table for an hour. Sorry, a half hour, and then we'll be right back.